Want access to the smartest people on the planet in digital, business, technology, and personal development? You've come to the right place. You're listening to Ryan Talks Digital, hosted by Ryan Chapman, guaranteed to make you smarter.
3, 2, 1. Navdeep Singh, great to have you on board with the show today. Welcome.
Hi, Ryan. How are you doing?
I'm
Perfect
very well,
weather,
thanks.
isn't
Oh, it's
it?
wonderful. Wonderful. These are kind of the days that we dream about when you've got those dreary, wet days outside. These are the exact days that we dream about.
Perfect.
You've got an interesting background. Now, I've checked you out on LinkedIn. You studied at the University of Jammu back in India, and you did your master's degree here in Australia at the University of Sydney. And you ended up becoming an iOS engineer. And these days, you're leading iOS engineers as a chapter lead. So tell us about your story.
Ryan, very interesting story. I'm going to start by saying that I basically come from the northernmost state of India, which is Jammu and Kashmir. As growing up as a youngster, I didn't have much exposure to technology. But again, as we were approaching early 2000s, started knowing a lot more about this news breaking up, the Y2K issue. And I am actually a very, very inquisitive individual, as and I like to find out about how things work, why certain things are the way they are. So it basically inclined my interest more towards computers and the related technology. And this is the time when in my school as well, we were starting to set up these IT labs and latest cutting edge things that really piqued my interest towards technology. So that's that was my primary interest. That's where I thought, okay, fine. After year 12, so in India, after year 12, you basically choose the main profession that you want to study further in. So I basically got enrolled into Bachelor's of Engineering with Jammu University, and that's where I did my engineering in IT. And again, started working with Cognizant Technology Solutions in the southernmost part of India, and with them I was with American Express. And with American Express and Cognizant, how they basically work is when we join as a fresher, we join the organization, they basically give you 3 months to figure out which technology do you want to be part of. So as a fresher, you get to work with iOS, you get to work with Android, you get to work with testing, networks, and whatever you like to work with, you basically, give your choices. And I really was intrigued with iOS. So that's when I chose iOS and, worked for a couple of years in the technology space. And then I realized, there has to be a next level. I want to study more in depth regarding the technology space. And then I basically thought, okay, what all options do I have? That's when I thought, let me go ahead and start searching for my master's degree options. And that's where I stumbled across University of Technology Sydney. And I did my couple of years with University of Technology Sydney. Amazing university. Infrastructure wise, the support staff, the assignment that we did, the curriculum, next level at this. And this is 2013 when I started. So again, came to Sydney, beautiful Australia, and I did my couple of years in Sydney. And then majorly my focus was masters in IT. So I wanted to go even further level, deeper in the technology space. And that's where I've, fell even further, even more in love with the mobile space, I would say. And then, carried on with my journey with iOS space.
And these days, you're a chapter lead in iOS. So what does a chapter lead do?
See, the chapter lead, as an iOS chapter lead, my responsibilities, I would say, I would want to, try to give you an overview. If you take about 100% of my time, 10% to 20% of my time is basically forward looking. As you know, iOS is a changing ecosystem. Every year we have the latest releases of iOS coming. We have, WWDC, where Apple announces latest SDKs, latest frameworks that you can leverage to deliver even high quality experiences for our customers. 30 to 40% is definitely people in performance management. It's stakeholder management, people like you, where I have to interact with, the business guys just to translate the business to the IT guys or to the engineers, and, and play a bit of back and forth between business and technology side of things, right? And I would definitely say, about 30 to 40% of my role is actually hands-on as well. a bit of working with the squads, a bit of handling, tech debt. You can't build quality features without having a quality foundation. So you have to keep the code base really robust. So managing the tech debt of the application is very, very important to us. So yeah, that's an overview about the current role that I am in.
You've got you had a sideline activity which I'm going to reveal to people. I'm not sure if a lot of people know this, but back in 2000, maybe 2018, 2019, you were pretty busy doing something which was writing a book, on software engineering. Tell us about that. Why did you decide to write the book? What inspired you?
The thing is, Ryan, the way I learn is basically, if I learn something, I try to replicate it or reciprocate it by writing a blog about it, right? So I basically got into habit of writing blogs. I write them till date as well. So this is 2016, 17 when I started writing about technology as general. It's not just a mobile blog. So, and then when I stumbled across functional reactive programming, I fell in love with it. I thought, let me explore it a little deeper. And that's when I realized, just one block is not going to suffice the need. So I explored the technology deeper, and I thought, let me get in touch with one of the publishers and, propose an idea to them that can we, do something in partnership, and they obliged. So we basically struck a deal, and I wrote a book for reactive programming, RX Swift. And that book is available on Amazon. So if you want to purchase, go for it.
We'll provide links at the end of the show on the book, but I think it's a fantastic thing. I think one of the things I love doing in my spare time is sharing knowledge. And obviously this show is all about sharing knowledge and helping people progress their careers and also progress professionally as well, but also personally too. So I love the idea that you've actually gone and written the book, because one of the things I like to do is teach in my spare time. And it's a way for me to give back, I feel, because I've built up a lot of knowledge throughout my career. And being a teacher and helping people sort of progress in their lives, like I said, professionally or personally, is a very rewarding thing. So I think it's awesome you wrote this book. Are you thinking about writing anything else?
Writing a book at this point in time, probably no. There are multiple reasons for that, but I am continuously, working towards, as you mentioned, helping the society, bringing up new leaders, enabling other people in the society to leverage technology to deliver experiences. So I am, at this point in time, I am partnering with RMIT. So RMIT is one of these universities in Melbourne. They have a course, a Swift iOS-based course in conjunction with Apple that they've created. And I'm mentoring that course for RMIT. And it's an online course. Anyone across the world can enroll into that course. And I basically mentor the guys to basically learn iOS foundational skills first, and then create applications and bring their ideas to life. My students range from as early as freshers, 19, 20 years old, to people who have actually at the verge of retiring or even have retired. It's amazing to see how people are actually how much they are inquisitive about technology, what they can achieve by actually leveraging the technology that we have today. Amazing. A few of my students were actually showcased by Apple in their newsletter as well. So pretty proud of them.
Yeah. Now you talked about your story in terms of becoming an engineer and what inspired you. Do you have any regrets? Do you think back and go, you know what, maybe I should have been a product owner, maybe I should have been, a tester, or maybe even a UX designer?
The thing is, Ryan, the journey is just started for me. And to answer your question, there's no regrets, but I definitely feel that, now that I'm at this point in time where I'm able to the next stage for me is basically becoming more like a T-shaped individual. I feel that I've gone and become an expert in one particular technology, but now I'm going to expand my exposure to maybe cloud technologies, to maybe more business oriented, maybe assisting more people, maybe raising more leaders, as you can say. So, definitely the next step of my journey is towards that step itself.
And there's so many avenues that you can pursue as an engineer. I mean, the world is really your oyster as an engineer. So you pursued iOS, but you also you can code in Android and you can code in web. Why have you stuck with iOS? Why did you decide to pursue it?
This has to be tailored back in time. So when I was actually given a chance to explore iOS, Android, web technologies, I tried my hands on it. Now with very limited knowledge at that point in time. Why iOS? Because few examples I would definitely want to tell you, right? iOS is a very, very closed ecosystem. I felt that and I till date I feel the same, is basically iOS is built around user. They don't try to change a user's behavior. Apple guys, they basically study a user's, I would say, life, the way they are living their life, the way they're organizing their work and their work-life balance. Their products, they basically fit a particular person's day-to-day activities. It's not as if they're working backwards, that they have a technology and they can now create a product out of it. They basically have an idea that can assist people in living better, and then they basically develop technologies at the back of that particular idea. And I think when you keep the user at the center, you are going to attract a lot of people who towards that particular sort of a vision. And that's why and that's how I actually got attracted towards the goal, towards their why. So that's my reason of working with Apple technologies for so long.
Yeah, and they've got an evangelical following. So you often see this when there's a product release, like a new iPhone, for example, or a new Mac or whatever it is. People end up sleeping out the front of Apple stores, and we're talking like days and days before the actual release. And this is happening pre-COVID. I'm not sure if it was happening during COVID-19 because of obviously social distancing and lockdowns and all the rest of it. But people would just sleep out the front of Apple stores across the US, across Europe, Asia as well. I haven't seen it so much in Australia, but there has been some in Australia. And we're talking about people sleeping out in the middle of winter when it's like, freezing cold. And you don't see that too often with products. And it's quite a unique phenomenon. Why do you think that is with Apple?
It's very, very simple answer, Ryan. The thing is, anything that you use or any product that you basically have in your pocket, for instance, it's basically an extension of your personality. And that's where, people are able to relate more with Apple products. And, same thing goes for, brands like Harvey, where, people have tattooed a company's logo on their bodies. It's kind of a similar approach, because people are able to connect to the bigger why that Apple has, because people think that Apple is actually working for their needs. And that's when people are able to connect to their products more. And that's why, that sort of following, that sort of a crazy fan following is there, because any product that Apple comes up with, even be an extension of an existing product or a new product, people feel that it's going to drastically impact and change the way they are living, and enhance the living that they're actually already, have in place. So that's, I think, one of the major reasons why people, really stand outside the lines to get their hands on those products.
There's a very good book by a guy called David Meerman Scott called Finnocracy. It's a very good read if anyone's interested. And what he does is he explores the psychology between people that become effectively fans of products. And so you've got consumers and customers, but then it's the next level, which is the sort of the fan level, which is basically people. To the analogy we're just talking about, will actually queue out the front of an Apple store, or they'll wait out, I don't know, out the front of a Tesla dealership, for example, for that brand new Tesla. And we're talking, they're obsessed. They're obsessed with it. The truck as well. They're obsessed with it. And it talks about the fact that, if you're able to create such loyalty through unique, obsessive customer kind of focus here, it's reciprocated in turn by customers who sort of reciprocate by saying, we love the fact that you're building, you're designing, you're creating things that kind of just understand us. And it's a big gap. And you see there's a lot in organizations that, are aspiring to be sort of digital wannabes and sort of startup wannabes, is they just don't get it sometimes. And they get so caught up in the bureaucracy of delivering stuff, and they've forgotten what their purpose is at the end of the day, which is the why, which you spoke about, which is we're here for the customer. And if we don't obsess about the customer and build out things with the customer at the heart of things, and don't allow that to get corrupted by the way that we deliver and the things that we sort of have to do as an organization, will succeed. And I think that's sadly lacking, I think, and some people just don't get it at times. So coming back to the Apple example, obviously you're a fan, I'm a fan as well. Are there any other products or any sort of other organizations you can think of that really appeal to you and have that sort of same sense of loyalty amongst their customer base?
See, what I say at this moment, I'm really I would say bullish about the latest metaverse, if you want to talk about the latest future. And why is that? Because, they're moving towards the future. They're actually trying to envision a new kind of a space, like how Apple envisioned the phone back in 2007, 2008, the iPhones. Similarly, the metaverse is actually taking the latest cognizance towards next leap forward. They're trying to show us what is possible outside the space that we're actually living in, right? And that's what Apple did. It's kind of groundbreaking in a lot of sense. So that's one of the space that I am actually really really bullish about, where you can by making use of VR AR devices and the video, you are able to live in a world where you don't have to be present in the same room as the other individual to just for example be in a meeting or play a game with someone other. Now my parents in India, right? Now at this point in time, the max I can feel them or basically interact with them is using this video conferences or video calls, right? Now imagine a world where we are able to talk to them or experience things in kind of a simulated environment, which will again, I think, bring in people even closer by making yourself or leveraging the latest technology that we have. And I'm really really bullish about those trends. Maybe the next big thing.
Yeah, you touched on
next
it.
idea.
It's a great topic because I recently interviewed Gabor Deveni, who you know as well.
Yes.
If you haven't seen that show, guys, make sure you check it out because it's actually a very good interview with Gabor, who talks about crypto. But we also get into the concept of remote working. And one of the things I am very bullish on when it comes to the concept of remote working is it's here to stay. And I think that organizations that sort of deny the reality of remote working, like some US banks, for example, that want their people in 5 days a week, are they're putting their head in the sand and ignoring the reality of the future of workplaces. And that is that younger generations are coming through the workforce and they have higher expectations that work will mold around their lifestyle rather than the other way around. Now, I've sort of come from a different background, which is I've had to mold my lifestyle around work. And so it's definitely been a transition for me getting used to this new world, but I absolutely love it because effectively it gives you so much flexibility to not only do a great job and really enjoy your work and really immerse yourself in work, but also just have some flexibility in your lifestyle as well. But one of the things we spoke about in that show with Gabor was the idea that virtual reality and augmented reality when it comes to the workplace as well, because one of the gaps I think that we're lacking and we haven't solved yet in the workplace is that when you are remote working, you do feel socially disconnected from people. And there is a very strong argument put forward by executives, which I fully get and I support, is that there is something about there's something sort of magical, I guess, about the idea that you're in an office together and you're planning and you're working ideas, and particularly in the work that we do, which is very much about creating new customer concepts and ideating and so on, is sometimes it's better done when you're face to face. Now, that's not to say it should always be done face to face, but it just seems to work better when you're face to face. Now, what better use case to solve this kind of remote working, let's work virtually, but let's be sort of face to face, is Metaverse. It's basically the idea that you can actually be virtually in the same room together in an augmented reality or a virtual reality context. And I could be sort of facing you in the same room, but still in the comfort, in the sort of the creature comforts of my own home, still working from my home, but actually interacting with you. And I think it's got potential, so much potential. So I think the first wave is all about sort of creating this new, virtual world of interaction and people sort of working out things socially and from a retail perspective, for example, buying land or shopping. But I think the next kind of wave will be, how do we then use this to sort of create better working environments for productivity, but also, accepting the fact that we're in a remote working context now as well.
Yeah. And the thing is, there's so much more to communication rather than, just me being on a video and sitting like this, rather than me actually expressing with my body language, as you can say, when we are actually interfacing with people in much more better way, you're able to communicate better. Even if I'm not sitting here just nodding my head, acknowledging what you're saying, you'll feel that whatever you're trying to communicate with me, it's actually more far reaching than someone who's on a video conference. So I would definitely say there are more advantages of the future that we are seeing with Metaverse.
Yeah. And they say, I don't have the statistic to hand, but you touched on the point, which is a good one, which is body language is so essential for human interaction. And, we have these meetings sometimes where it's basically just a conference call meeting where there's no sort of video interaction and everyone's entitled to, have their own preferences around whether they want to display their cameras or not. But sometimes it feels a little bit clinical when you're having those conversations. Whereas if you're face to face, like we are in this show today, it just feels a lot richer and a lot more sort of human. And I think that's
100%.
that's something that we're lacking at the moment in the remote working context. So I'm really, like you, I'm bullish about Metaverse, not so much about obviously the sort of social retail side of things, but I think there's a lot of potential when it comes to the workplace with Metaverse. And I'm really hopeful and excited to see what that will be for us in the future. You're a fan of Apple, and we've spoken about Apple at length. And I know every year you get very excited, and it's not not because of Diwali, which you celebrate as a Hindu, or Christmas, which I celebrate as a Christian, but it's about a specific event that happens in around about, I think, June every year, actually. And it's WWDC, Worldwide Developers Conference, which is from Apple for 2021. And as I said, I know you always get excited. What were your key takeaways from this year's WWDC?
Awesome question, Ryan. Thing is, when I was actually watching all those live sessions, and not a lot of people actually talked about it, but one thing that really grew on me was, how Apple is trying to bring a lot of processing power to these devices, right? Now, with all these latest bionic chips that they are introducing in your devices, what they're basically trying to tell you is that, all the processing, all the data processing, all the intelligence or the AI processing or the ML processing that they want to do, it can be, they're imagining a future that they'll be able to do it on device. So that basically means that your data doesn't have to leave your devices. Now, when you're talking about user, their privacy comes first, right? So when Apple talks about processing on device, that basically means that the user is actually protected. Their data is not leaving their devices. For example, Siri is now able to make or able to give you suggestions right on the devices. Earlier, whatever commands you were giving to Siri, they were actually leaving your device and the processing was actually happening somewhere on the cloud. That's actually changing. Now with latest, trends in the way that their hardware is actually improving, maybe there's a future, maybe 2 or 3 releases down the line. And when I release, every release, I wouldn't count as just 1 year down the line, the major release. Now, with maybe 2 or 3 releases, maybe you're talking about shared knowledge where an application is able to share this knowledge amongst users who are actually just using the application without sharing user data specifically over the cloud servers. Now that actually protects users even further. So I think Apple has envisioned it. They're again leading the pathway and maybe setting an example for other companies as well. But again, this was my major takeaway from this last year's WWDC for sure.
So my takeaway from that is effectively what we're saying is with everyone's new MacBook, for example, you've effectively got your own capability to run your own AI independent of, I guess the massive infrastructure requirements that's often required to sort of process data and make AI effective. Is that correct to say?
I'm more in terms of, for example, when you have a machine learning model. So a model is what drives intelligence. It kind of, when you have to train a model, when you have to impart knowledge to a machine learning model, you basically have to train it with certain data sets. And that overall process is very, very I would say, intensive. So you basically need to train your models, provide these data sets. And we are talking about GBs of data, terabytes of data that needs to go through these particular models. And, then this model basically tries to collate specific details of all that data and then tries to make sense of what intelligence is. So that's what artificial intelligence in its core is. At this point in time, because it requires so much processing power, all this training only happens on the cloud or massive servers. Now by bringing the capability on the smaller devices, right, for your iPhones for that matter, what you're trying to say is that moving in future, you don't have to run these intensive operations on the cloud. So you're basically removing or decoupling the need or removing the need of sending your data onto the cloud. So that's the direction. So yeah, even your MacBooks are improved with the latest M1 chips, but yeah, my comment was more towards the iPhones, the latest cutting edge technology that you have in your pockets. How are we actually moving forward with that?
Got it. We've spoken about technology and obviously all the good things about technology, but it does frustrate people sometimes, technology. And, for the best of us, even us working in digital, we sometimes see things, we go, what, that should be working a lot better. From your experience, and I guess maybe sort of more relevant today, what frustrates you about technology? Where do you see there's opportunities for improvement?
The thing is, again, as when we talk about, disruption, especially while working, and context switching, notifications, how they can actually take away your, I would say, focus for 20 minutes. Every small disruption in your work to life balance can actually disrupt the way you're actually working. But what I feel is, I think as a user, you have to be a bit more cognizant regarding how you basically use the devices and how you can actually leverage this technology, right? Thing is, now when Apple actually in the latest release of WWDC, they've actually given more control to users, where they actually can now see a report of how they're actually using their devices, how much time are they spending on a particular application, how they can actually silence all the notifications for a particular applications, or maybe group them together into just one bundle so that they can be delivered to the user in a particular time space when they want to see that. So I feel that technology is there, but again, it depends upon individuals. If you don't utilize it, you will be disturbed. So I would definitely encourage people more to make use of this latest, or maybe first get aware that there is such a piece of functionality that exists in your devices, and then start utilizing it to maybe work more effectively and more efficiently.
And I think it's one of the challenges I think we all have, is that our lives are so busy and we've got so much on our plates these days. And it's the kind of paradox effect where that technology was intended to make our lives easier. And at times I feel that there's just so much of it, coupled with so much information we're expected to be across. And in fact, technology has probably made our lives even more complex because of the fact that we're expected to kind of do so much more. And I think in a work context, that's even more true, because effectively, you have multiple communication apps that you're meant to use in a workplace context. It could be switching from email to something like a Slack, Teams these days. It used to be Skype. You're expected to be across all that. Then on top of that, you've got your collaboration tools, of which there are multiple tools when you work in software engineering, for example, or software development, and goes on and goes on. So I think one of the challenges we have is the fact there's proliferation of all these things that we're supposed to be across, but there's no sort of, I guess there's no productivity associated with it. So it's definitely a challenging world that we live in, particularly in a workplace context. But equally, when it comes to communication outside of work, when you're using things like WhatsApp and you've got SMS and you've got things like, obviously email still as well, trying to keep across all these communication channels really becomes quite tiring after a while. You and I have spoken at length about AI and chatbots, and we've often spent a fair amount of our time sort of thinking and ideating on ideas of startups, which I'm sure we'll get to one day. And by the way, if there's anyone watching the show today, if you've got some great ideas about startups and AI and chatbots, definitely get in touch with us, because we're still working on some ideas. So if you want to work with us, let us know. It'd be great to hear from you. So make sure you leave some comments today. What do you think, from your perspective, Nav, is the future of AI and chatbots?
Talking about chatbots, Ryan, this maybe, let's go back a couple of years, maybe 3 years back in time. Everything was more driven towards, by rule-based chatbots. By rule-based, I basically want to tell you, it's basically like a flowchart where you start interacting with the chatbot. It basically asks you a bunch of questions, and then depending upon the response of that questions, it's very, the routes are basically very, very static. So the chatbot was not intelligent enough to remember the context. So when you ask one question to the chatbot, it'll basically ask you 3 questions, and then depending upon your response, it will direct you to one of those paths. And when you are actually going back, one level up, it would not remember your responses, right? So the chatbots were not smart enough to remember the context of the conversation. But that is actually changing, Ryan. So now the chatbots are getting more and more intelligent, and it's moving away from these rule-based engines that they used to run on. Now they are actually more towards artificial intelligence. They are remembering the context as well. So for example, by context, what I mean is, suppose, for example, you are interacting with the business today, back 3 years back in time. You would start a conversation with business, and you would basically, suppose you received a call midway through the conversation and you had to leave the conversation. When you come back to the business, the chatbot would not remember the context, right? So you'll have to start and give all the information again, try to provide the context once again. But with these context-based chatbots these days, you can resume your conversations right from where you left, and it's not time boxed. So you can actually come back to the chatbot or the business day after tomorrow. You don't have to be sitting there. So that's the power that they can actually bring in, and that's where businesses can more intelligently interact with the customers, and even the customers will not be frustrated with the experiences that these chatbots. A lot of people, when they notice that there's a chatbot that's actually talking to them, they kind of try to swerve away from it. Or someone like me, they would try to search for an option where the chatbot hands the control over to a human sitting behind the scenes, right? But I think with these latest context-based chatbots who kind of can provide these amazing experiences to the users or the customers, they can actually work really well for the businesses. You know, right, how much call volumes we get in for example, in the bank. So imagine, taking half of those calls away by making use of these context-based chatbots.
Yeah,
It'd be awesome, right?
I think one of the frustrations from any customer experience, and we've all been there, and I'm sure everyone watching this today could relate to this, is that scenario where you ring up a contact center and you've had a problem and you spend 10 minutes explaining the problem, and then at the end of the 10 minutes they say to you, "I'll need to transfer you to another team." And that for some people, that's a deal breaker. Like that just sends them into a tailspin, because effectively you've just wasted 10 minutes of your life explaining something that you're going to have to repeat all over again. And invariably you get the response, "No, I'll transfer to someone, I'll explain it to them." But when you do get connected to the next person in the sort of sequence of calls, that person that you actually are connected through asks you to explain it all over again. So then you just wasted another 10 minutes explaining it, and hopefully that person can resolve it. Or alternatively, if they can't resolve it, then they send you on to a third person. You have to explain it all over again. So where I see your point is effectively with chatbots, you've effectively got a one-on-one relationship with a piece of technology that's acting in a human context with someone to sort of take them through, solve a problem, answer a question, deal with an activity that needs to be completed. And it's a one-on-one relationship. And I think to your point, one of the beautiful things about it is effectively that conversation can be resumed at any point. So effectively you go away for a couple of years and you come back in 2 years' time and something else has happened. That chatbot, that agent effectively knows that it's already had a conversation with you. It's got the full history. It could potentially predict maybe what's going to happen next year based on other people's experiences as well. So the smarts around the actual interaction with people becomes tremendous, because effectively what you're now doing is you've got the capability to solve problems a lot quicker, because you've got all this knowledge that these chat bots are actually feeding off of, which I think is very different in a human context. Because let's be honest, in a call center today, people take calls and they answer the calls and they do their job to the best of their abilities, but the sort of the connection between what customers are asking and problems that are popping up doesn't necessarily get communicated more widely across the contact center team. And that's where I think with chatbots, the ability to integrate with a sort of common knowledge base of scenarios that are happening with the customers can mean that your queries, your activities, your problems can get solved a lot quicker, which I think is very exciting.
It is. And the thing is, the other bit is, when you're actually talking to a human being, they're only focused on solving your problem, and you are actually giving them a lot more valuable information, right? Things that actually impact you, and things that actually trigger you. Now when you're actually talking to a chatbot, you can actually create your chatbot in such an intelligent way that they actually record all this information in a knowledge base within the business, so that in future you can utilize that knowledge based on the user profile, and try to suggest them certain products that can actually elevate the user's experience. Now imagine a world where you are able to deliver that, to do that. Because when we are actually today we are talking to a human being, they are only trying to focus on solving only one problem, and there's a lot of information that's just going wasted. But businesses can actually really leverage these chatbots, these intelligent machines, to actually benefit the customer. Again, let's keep the customer at the center and then work around it. How can we leverage these chatbots and these technology? Again, how Apple actually works. I would definitely say, they are the future. Other thing that comes to my mind is just, sentiment analysis. We do sentiment analysis today as well by, making use of NLP and those sort of things. How about a future where a chatbot is able to understand that sentiment, and that how a customer is actually talking to them? Is he charged up? What can I do? Can I offer something that, from the offers that are already available with the business, so that I can soothe the customer first and then try to analyze and try to understand the problem that the customer is trying to solve.
I think, and one of the things that happens often with a contact center sort of call in a scenario is that at the end of the contact center call, you are asked, there's a proactive step by contact center folks to say, is there anything else I can help you with? But there is a missing gap, which you've touched on, which is effectively, well, I don't know. Is there something else that needs to be solved? Because as a customer, I don't know that. I don't have the time to have that knowledge to hand. But you've got all the data there at your end to actually know this. And if you're able to apply analytics and AI over it, you might actually find that not only with me individually, but across a customer base or a segment of a customer base, there are things that may be happening that I don't know about, and maybe that should be solved for me, but that's not being solved because effectively a contact center person doesn't have that information. So that's where a lot of the power, I think, the data and the AI side of it becomes really powerful when it comes to chatbots as well. So today you're a chapter lead, and you've obviously moved through various roles to become a chapter lead. Do you miss, or do you still have the opportunity, for example, to do coding, or do you miss it?
As when I was doing the breakdown, of my day-to-day activities, I mentioned, I still am hands-on. So I still, work on tech debt, and I love working on tech debt. Not many people actually say that, but I feel, when you're leading a team, you're kind of setting an example for others as well. So I like to work in a section of the code base which is a bit more contrived, I would say, a bit more legacy. But again, if I'm able to better something from this original shape, it kind of motivates me the further. So, yes, to answer your question, I am still hands-on, and I would, even in the next role, probably, whatever it be, I would like to stay, in touch with technology. The mentorship thing that I do with RMIT, it's my one step that I take from my personal life to stay more connected with the essentials of the technology, the foundations of technology till date. But yeah, I would definitely want to stay connected with technology, hands-on. But at this point in time, I wouldn't say, I'm 100% hands-on. Maybe 40-30% I am still hands-on. I love that pace.
2022 is looming for all of us. It's a new year. And who knows what that year is going to hold for us. We're seeing another COVID-19 variant that's popping up in the world. So it doesn't seem to stop. But putting that aside, obviously we're all hopeful and optimistic for 2022 as being a bright year in terms of our work, at least in digital, because it's been very busy for us the last couple of years since COVID-19 broke out. For you individually and for your career professionally, what are some unfulfilled goals that you have, and how do you think you're going to cover them off in 2022?
You're touching, I would say, an untapped nerve, Ryan. And the thing is, we've been working on a few ideas. There are certain ideas that I keep thinking about. How can we leverage that? Crypto is one of the spaces that I've, started exploring, as you mentioned, with Gebo. I am looking at a few platforms in that space as well, and NFTs is other. Now, these sort of ideas are just sitting at the back of my head. I'm still conceptualizing, still thinking about those ideas. How can I leverage the technology, the platforms, the languages? The latest one I'm learning is Rust at this point in time. Solana attracts me a lot. So I'm just exploring, what can we do in that particular space. So that's one aspect, of creating something valuable that can actually be rolled out to people and, be of some value to people to use. The other bit is, continuously working towards enabling people. I definitely see myself as a tech enabler. That's why RMIT, that's where, it kind of really fulfills the soul, I would say. It kind of keeps feeding the fire, the burning fire that I have inside me to deliver something, to enable people, to bring them up, let them leverage the technology and create awesome experiences for people. Just to give you an example, I had one of the students, 70 years old, recently retired professor. And the use case that he had was to create an application to help people gather for church ceremonies. Now, when I see people like that, trying to address social problems by making use of technology and then enrolling to a course that I am mentoring them, imagine the sort of motivation that brings to me, right? So these are the two top things that I continuously want to work on, keep in my headspace for the next 12 months.
Giving is such an underestimated life force, I guess, in this world. And, it sounds a little bit selfish at times, but when you give, you do receive. It definitely does work, and it makes you feel so good. So yeah, I fully hear you on that one. It's a great thing that you're doing that, Nav. Now, you love movies. I know you love movies, and I know you love Elon Musk as much as I do as well. And maybe we could say that we're fans of Elon Musk and what they're doing at Tesla. I'm going to share a movie with you, and just give me 1 sec while I set this up. I'll make sure everything's working. And I'm just going to play this for you, and we're going to talk about this in a moment.
I think the danger of AI is much greater than the danger of nuclear warheads by a lot. Mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes.
I try to convince people to slow down AI, to regulate AI. This was futile. I tried for years.
The biggest issue I see with so-called AI experts is that they think they know more than they do. And they think they're smarter than they actually are. This tends to plague smart people. They define themselves by their intelligence, and they don't like the idea that a machine could be way smarter than them, so they discount the idea, which is fundamentally flawed. That's the wishful thinking situation. I'm really very close to the cutting edge in AI, and it scares the hell out of me. It's capable of vastly more than almost anyone knows, and the rate of improvement is exponential.
It feels like we are the biological bootloader for AI, effectively. We are building it. And then we're building progressively greater intelligence. And the percentage of intelligence that is not human is increasing. And eventually, we will represent a very small percentage of intelligence.
Nav, so are humans destined to be basically go the way of the dinosaurs? Are we going to basically, evolve ourselves out of existence on this planet with AI?
It is scary for sure, and he's right in saying that. As you know, humans take millions of, if not thousands, years to evolve, even 0.1%. But when you have something learning when you're even sleeping, for example, if you create an AI or a program that is able to learn by itself now and able to replicate itself, that's where it starts going haywire, right? Now, we as humans might take thousands of years to just evolve 0.1%, but an AI can evolve to maybe 200% in just seconds. Now imagine a time when AI is able to, today evening some group of scientists create such an AI, by tomorrow morning it'll be able to do much more than what an collective sense of intelligence of humans is able to achieve in thousands of years. So that's the risk, right? Because one, it evolves really quickly, and second, the humans, as you mentioned, who are working on this AI, they are kind of underestimate what AI will be able to achieve. Now, is it scary? Yes, it is. But again, are we really close in future for that being happening? I doubt that, because at this point in time, it's not that mature, I would say, for us to be really scared. But again, that's not the direction that I want things to pan out in.
So explain for people, because some people don't perhaps understand the concept of singularity when it comes to AI. What's the concept of singularity?
It's an interesting concept. So the thing is, as I mentioned, right? So a day when AI is able to learn by itself. So imagine, when you are working on me and when you're working on something to create something new, for example, a new startup, right? We have to learn certain things, right? And then we basically implement the idea of that particular idea and the technological learnings that we have, we put into practice and create something new, right? And AI, when it is able to do such a thing, learn by itself and create something new, maybe a better version of itself, that's where technical advancements take over. That's when there's a technical explosion and technology kind of takes over, and everything is kind of autonomous from there onwards. There is no need of human intervention. And that when such a day actually comes, you won't need to go to office to write a piece of code to create applications. So your code will automatically write the latest cutting edge feature that you want to deliver for the customers. So that's the stage. So that's the singularity, the point of singularity, where technological advancements, they kind of break the threshold where it doesn't need any more human intervention to go to the next level, right? And it kind of goes out of control from there.
When do you think it's going to happen? When do you think singularity is going to happen? Come on, give me a tip.
I wish never, but and we are not anywhere close at this point in time, for sure. But the way at which people are, and the amount of resources, I mean technical and monetary, and the effort that's being poured into such researches really scares me out. There's like at this point in time, I'm aware of so many companies who are working on these cutting edge technologies. Be it, they basically start with a small roadmap or a small problem or a subset of a problem. For example, Microsoft is working on AI for farms and fields, right? But again, once you have developed an AI for one particular subset of problem, you can replicate it to another sectors as well, right? So, but again, I don't think it happening, anytime closer. But again, what is close is relative, right? So at this point, I am still, I would say at least we have 10 more years till the time that matures to that level. And hopefully we get regulated before that, as Elon talks in his talks. It should be regulated. You should only allow it to, maybe learn till a certain threshold level, not allowed after that, because you want to be in charge.
So so what you're saying is you're disagreeing with Elon Musk. You won't be happy with him because he said 2025 is his prediction as to when singularity happens. So, which sounds very aggressive, and it's what, that's only 4 years away, effectively. You don't think that's going to happen?
I don't think that's going to happen. If as he is proposing it, right, it's going to happen. There'll be a lot of other people on the globe who also might have predicted that. Hopefully their voices are being heard at the highest levels of the regulatory authorities, and hopefully regulations come into picture maybe 1 year down the line. And if we get those regulations into picture, this pace will slow down, and it'll then continue at a very, very nominal pace, not at this fast rate.
So one of the things I think about with this space, sorry to cut you off. One of the things I think about with this space is kind of like the threat is unquantified, but effectively you think about in the sense of if we become inferior in terms of our ability as intelligent beings on this planet, and effectively we're superseded by something that's far more intelligent, combined with robotics as well to actually act and do things physically, then it's a precarious situation, because robotics and technology doesn't have a spirit. It doesn't have any sort of evil intent, but effectively it relies on the facts and information that's presented to it. So effectively, if it sees things that it doesn't agree with or it doesn't compute very well with, for example, our destruction of the planet Earth and our overpopulation of this Earth, who's to say that technology doesn't go, that's a threat to its existence and decides to wipe us out? So I kind of think of this as, you're absolutely right around regulation. It's the Wild West at the moment. And to me, it's the best analogy would be, imagine we go back to the 1940s when they were basically creating the first atomic bomb. That was regulated effectively because it was run at a state level, it was run at a US government level, it was run in the Soviet Union, it was run in obviously countries like Britain, etc. But the fact it was mandated and regulated at a government level. These days, anyone can be exploring and mucking around in AI and could be creating something that could potentially be destructive to the human race in the future. So effectively, we've got millions and millions of people around this world who effectively have the same ability to create a nuclear weapon comparatively in terms of its ability to destroy human beings and just do something terrible to this planet, compared to the 1940s. So it's concerning. But I mean, I'm all for the technology. As you know, we're all about technology where we work and what we do in our day-to-day lives, and we've got to be proactive and optimistic about this. But at the same time, it definitely needs to be regulated, and there needs to be some controls. And I think the number one thing that we need here is a kill switch. So basically, if we see that this is getting a life of its own and it's just taking off, then we need the ability to be able to turn it off quickly.
Yeah. Feature toggle.
Yeah. A feature toggle. Exactly right. Exactly right. Now, Nav, you've been in software engineering now for 10 years. So you've learned a lot and you've got a lot of experience, and you're doing some great work these days as well as a leader of iOS engineers. Looking back to your younger self, what would be the best advice you could give yourself that you know today that you could give yourself 10 years ago?
Awesome. You're asking really tough questions, Ryan. Going back in time, I would definitely tell myself, and that's just, learning over a period of last 10 years, I could have accelerated even faster, I feel. And the reason why I say that is because over a period of last 10 years, I have actually found something really like a really cutting edge technology, and maybe 2 or 3 of them. And I have started working on all of them simultaneously, only to realize 1 year down the line that, I haven't kind of mastered, or kind of even not even have reached on a mediocre level in all 3. So maybe going back in time, I would tell myself, when you have more than 2 or 3 options available to you that are looking really lucrative, pick one. do kind of a readiness or a prioritization within yourself, and pick one and stick with it for 100% of the effort, and then move on to the next thing. So whatever I do, and this is what I carry forward right now, right? So whatever I pick, I basically give my 100% to it and see through it to the end stage. If it is successful, good. If it's not, then I learn from it and then move on to the next thing, and because I feel that, if you are trying to work on, try to put or try to chew too much, you would not be able to deliver anything. And basically you will be moving backwards in time. A lot of time wasted, a lot of effort wasted. You might feel that you're really, really working, but you're just busy. You're not being productive. You're not adding value. So I would definitely want to avoid these sort of context switches that I had to do in my past work life, and definitely going to change on that.
It's a great observation, and I'm sure that feedback would be well received by the younger version of Navdeep Singh. I read a book recently called Richer, Wiser, Happier: How the World's Greatest Investors Win in Markets and Life, and it's by an author called William Green. And one of the concepts that comes through that book, it's a theme that comes through a lot of the investors in this book. And mind you, these investors are not only talking about their professional investment lives, but they're also talking about their personal lives and how they've succeeded personally and been happy personally. And that theme that you've just mentioned of focus is a consistent theme that pops up throughout their stories. And so, for example, Warren Buffett will go to work every day. He drives to McDonald's, gets his McDonald's breakfast in the morning.
Yeah, I've seen that.
You've seen that. Apparently, he's got a gold card, I think, for the local McDonald's in where he lives in Nebraska, which means he basically gets his McDonald's for free. Which, I mean, if anyone can afford a McDonald's meal, it has to be Warren Buffett. But anyway, he gets it for free, apparently. But one of the things he is insistent on every day with his work, and this is probably one of the sort of the factors with his success, is that he locks himself in a room for 6 to 8 hours every day and just sits there and reads financial reports. And that gives him the breathing space to focus, to think, to ideate, and come up with some brilliant ideas, which has made him extraordinarily wealthy. But not only him, but also all of his investors in Berkshire Hathaway as well. So it's a brilliant theme around focus. And I think it's something that we could all apply in our daily lives, is allocating some time to just focus on what's important, spend the time thinking, ideating, being creative, because we all have a creative ability that we don't tap into enough, is my opinion. And I think to your point as well about then once you've got something that you're passionate about, focus on it, stick to it. Don't let yourself get distracted, because when you get distracted, you start to run other people's races. Focus on your own race and keep true to that course. Navdeep Singh, it's been fantastic having you on the show today. It's been really great talking to you. We'll do this again very soon. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, Ryan. Thanks for inviting. Have a good one.
And catch you soon.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of Ryan Talks Digital with my guest, Navdeep Singh, iOS engineer and chapter lead. So what do you think about the topics we spoke about today? Do you think that Apple products are as good as people say they are, or do you think they're overrated? And when it comes to AI, do you think that Elon Musk is right, as in AI is more dangerous than nuclear weapons, or do you think that AI is only going to help humanity get better? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And also make sure to press on the thumbs up button if you like this episode, and also subscribe if you want to watch more videos like this one. And if you have friends, family, colleagues, or even your next door neighbor who are interested in growing professionally, building up their knowledge in business and technology, make sure to share this episode with them. They'll love you for it. As always, take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.